Mr. Nater, can you comment on Hockey Canada or Hockey Quebec pulling out of Hockey Canada, severing ties?
It was the right decision, and I hope the other provincial organizations do the same thing.
Do you think Hockey Canada should be just dissolved and reformed in some way? Like, where are we at?
I think we need meaningful change at the top of Hockey Canada. Obviously, the CEO has to go, and other management has to go as well. What we've seen over the past few months is a complete unwillingness to be transparent, a complete unwillingness to make the changes necessary to ensure that Canadians have trust and faith in the leadership of Hockey Canada.
Is there anything the government can do at this point?
Well, right now we need to put pressure on the organization. We need to put pressure on the 13 voting members to ensure that there's a board in place that's going to make those meaningful changes at the top.
Is the committee interested in calling CEOs of Tim Hortons or the other sponsors to ask what pressure they are going to also be putting on that?
That's a conversation that can certainly be had, but right now we're focused on what we can do as a committee to make sure that the Canadian public sees what's going on with this organization and that there's the demand for the change necessary.
Quick question on UCP leadership. What do you think of the proposition of Daniel Smith about this Sovereignty Act? Do you think it's like helping you guys here in any way? What do you think about that?
That's probably a question for an Alberta MP.
But it's still in your
So Canadians and Conservatives expect a strong, united Canada. And I think that's the one and only thing we need to be focused on is keeping our country united. And any talk about separatism is absolutely a non-starter with our party.
What's next for the committee on this with Hockey Canada? Are you going to hold more hearings? Are you going to call more witnesses? Where are we going from here?
So we've summoned by subpoena Bob Nicholson, former CEO of Hockey Canada. He'll be joining the committee by summons later this month. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say and the actions that happened under his watch for his many, many years as CEO of Hockey Canada.
Hockey Canada seems to have so much money. I mean, the federal hasn't moved all of its budget. What does it change?
Well, and that's one of the major things that we're seeing right now. When they have such a large amount of money in their coffers, the threat of losing money from the government isn't as big of an impact. That said, as was questioned earlier, the sponsors, they're losing. Hockey Canada is losing a lot of money right now from sponsorships, and I think as an organization with their provincial counterparts, they should be taking a long, hard look right now about how much they're willing to lose before they take meaningful action to change the culture within Hockey Canada.
I want to ask about this. Is that normal having to subpoena someone to show before
No, it's not normal. But what we found is an unwillingness of Hockey Canada to respond and to answer questions, and so we needed to go for this more serious step.
Have you subpoenaed any other witnesses, or is this?
So we've subpoenaed the Hockey Canada witnesses initially, the senior leadership team, and then these witnesses as well.
So with Nicholson, did you ask him politely first, and then he declined? Like, what was the process here?
So the process, unfortunately, those decisions happen in camera, so I can't comment on the process to issue the summons.
But it got to the point where you sponsored summons?
It was the agreement of the committee to issue a summons to invite to compel Mr. Nicholson to attend.
How do you read that when you have to summon somebody to come before committee?
I think it's incredibly unfortunate. This is an institution that used to be, highly respected, and so when we as a committee have to, resort to, shining light on the terrible situations we've seen in Hockey Canada, I think it's incredibly disappointing for us as a committee, but for all Canadians.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Long overdue, I would say. I'm really disappointed. I've followed this sport, as you guys know, for 40 years. I just can't believe yesterday's testimony by Andrea Skinner, and I'm really disappointed in Hockey Canada. They're not listening to Canadians. They've doubled down, and it's disgusting, really. And, as parliamentarians and even the sport minister, what can we do? Very little. They don't need the 6% funding from the federal government. What has to happen, and I think everybody realizes this, the sponsorships like Canadian Tire, like Tim Hortons, Scotiabank, have to withdraw their sponsorship of Hockey Canada. That is the only way that gets corrected. They have millions of dollars. They can weather the storm for years. And this has to happen, that the sponsors stand up to Hockey Canada. That is the only way this gets rectified.
Can I ask you what you've learned about what you learned this morning, that the Canadian government has been in talks with the Taliban for several months?
I'm dealing with Hockey Canada right now, if you don't mind.
What would be the consequences for the Tire if all the sponsorships are restored?
Yeah, well, you saw in Edmonton, right? There was no advertising around the rink boards. Hockey Canada did not sponsor the World Juniors in Edmonton this year. It was the IIHF. But Halifax is Hockey Canada's property. So yes, unfortunately, hockey players will be affected. There still will be World Juniors. Like I said, Hockey Canada has millions of dollars. They can weather this storm for years. It will be up to the sponsors, I believe now, and I've mentioned 3 of the big sponsors, to stand up and push back against Hockey Canada, because they do need change. You know, the statement by Andrea Skinner yesterday about, you know, the rinks will go dark and the Zambonis won't have their place in rinks and the skates will be dull is totally out of context. Come on. The Toronto Blue Jays fired their manager mid-season. Where are they today? They're in the playoffs. You can make changes in an organization. And, you know, we can cite several hockey teams over the years have made changes. Hockey Canada needs to make changes. If they don't make the change at the CEO level, then let's make the board change in November.
Can you be more specific? You talk about you would like to see more changes. So you talk about changing the board, but can you be more specific as to what change would you like to see happen?
Well, they're pretty arrogant right now. They're pretty arrogant. I mean, they're pushing back against you guys, the media, because of what you said about them. So they don't even agree with what you said, and they've spent a lot of money on Navigator. It's a company that is trying to put the narrative of they're great guys, nothing's wrong, we're going to change, everything will be fine. Well, that's not the case in this country.
But just public relations.
It's a nightmare. You know the... Well, let's start at the board level. Let's, first of all, I think we need Justice Cromwell's report. He's been summoned to do a report on Hockey Canada. Let's look when that comes out at the end of October, beginning of November, and start there. I think that's the first place. I have said from day one, the CEOs of this organization, dating back to Bob Nicholson, are too powerful. I've said that since day one. The board has never been in sync with the CEOs, whether it's Nicholson, Rennie, or Smith here today. So I think that needs to be addressed, and I'm hoping Cromwell's report will have an in-depth report on the board of directors and their role in Hockey Canada, because right now, both are not in sync.
Do you think that other provincial organizations should follow Hockey Quebec's lead in pulling out?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I've talked to the Saskatchewan guys, because I am from Saskatchewan. I think they're supporting Hockey Canada. Okay? I've heard Manitoba might support, so, and it's up to the individual hockey organizations. So Quebec's made the first move. I'm not sure how many others will follow, but we'll just wait and see. I mean, it's not up to me to dictate the grassroots of Saskatchewan or Manitoba or BC, but Quebec has made the first move.
What do you make of the fact that the committee had to get a subpoena for that former CEO to tell the
For Nicholson.
Yeah, well, it was my suggestion. I wanted Bob there.
When you have to subpoena someone, is that normal for a committee?
Yeah, I think it was. It was normal for this committee. Yeah, no, Bob, he's been with Hockey Canada, as we all know, for a long time. He built the organization, and he left in 2014. We need Bob to come and talk about his working relationship with the board, how he formed Hockey Canada. He was instrumental in Hockey Canada since day one. Very powerful man. We need to hear from him later in October.
Did he decline an invitation?
No, not that I know of. No, I think, you know, the committee, to get them there, this is what we did to make sure they know in advance.
Do you think you need to get the heads of the sponsors before the committee to ask what pressure they're going to put?
Well, that's up to them. That's not up to Parliament,
But you
right?
could subpoena them, you could ask them.
Well, I think it has already been spoken. I think the people of Canada have already backed Canadian Tire, Tim Hortons, Scotiabank. They've supported them. They're on the sidelines for now. So I think the management of those three companies that put a lot of money into Hockey Canada have already made the decision they want to see some change. I don't know if they're coming to Halifax for the World Juniors. That's a question maybe you should be asking their CEOs today. Okay? Thanks, guys. Take care.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
J'ai répondu à tout ça hier. OK, Québec, non, j'ai pas.
Ils ont décidé qu'hier, il y a une résolution, ils ont pris confiance en Hockey Canada, ils ont retiré la cotisation de 3 pour transfert à Hockey Canada.
C'est extraordinaire. C'est extraordinaire. C'est Jocelyn Thibault, OK, Québec, ça? Extraordinaire. C'est un bon mot.
Quel est le rôle que doivent jouer les fédérations régionales là-dedans?
Je pense que ça part avec ce qu'ils ont fait ce matin-là, puis on sent leur désaccord avec ce qui s'est passé. Alors, moi, je trouve ça très bien.
Concrètement, c'est quoi les changements que vous voudriez voir apporter? Bon, je comprends la structure de gouvernement.
C'est la démission. C'est la démission qu'on essaie de
c'est juste
forcer.
ça ou c'est plus?
Ben, au moins ça. D'abord, ils n'ont pas de sponsor. Ils n'ont plus d'argent. Ils vont faire quoi tantôt pour fonctionner? La confiance, comment tu veux qu'elle soit là si les mêmes personnes sont en place? Ils ont été pendant des années et puis il se passait des choses.
Mais ça change quoi, la démission de quelqu'un par rapport aux agressions sexuelles?
Ben, c'est de repartir sur de nouvelles bases, de nouvelles structures, avec du nouveau monde. C'est comme ça. Ça fait des années qu'ils sont en place.
M. Martel,
Ouais.
qu'est-ce que vous pensez du projettement du bloc d'éliminer les conditions sur les transferts en santé?
Là, présentement, on a des discussions au caucus. Je ne parle pas de ça tout de suite. Là.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de Daniel Smith en Alberta qui voudrait ne pas appliquer les lois fédérales qui sont contraires à l'Alberta?
On va tout... Hein? OK, merci beaucoup. Merci.
So it's we're just on the verge of cold and flu season, and mums and dads across the country are finding store shelves for pediatric pain relief to be missing those go-to formulas that they're looking for, the Advils, the Tylenols, the Motrins in pediatric formulation. And so far, we've heard that the minister sends thoughts and prayers. And for moms and dads out there, that's not really going to cut it when their children are spiking a fever and they're looking to keep them comfortable. So I'm going to be sending a letter to the minister today, and I will move a motion at the Health Committee calling on the government to take a step that they did early in the pandemic that allowed foreign language labeled inhalers into Canada, and then provide guidelines to doctors and pharmacists on how to administer those, and apply that same type of regulatory allowance for pediatric formulations for things like children's pain medication, because while we hear that we're just on the verge of this issue being resolved, we need to see some action, and mums and dads across the country really need the minister to take that step. So we're going to call on him to do that today. Hopefully, me having put my motion a motion forward at committee already, the minister is aware, and he's feverishly working to take those steps right now, and he'll have good news for you when they leave cabinet today, and leave caucus today. But that's what we're going to be asking for them to do.
Why the language requirement would alleviate the problems that what the medication would come from the U.S.? Can you explain?
Yeah. So the minister has said, and industry has said, that currently the medication is all sourced in Canada, and importation of medication would have requirements, similar to other products that require specific language compliance. And something that a box that's in Spanish, for example, would not normally be imported into Canada, but with directions to medical professionals, to pharmacists, to family physicians, and temporary labeling, or the ability for pharmacists to transfer from one bottle to another and then label it in pharmacy. This would allow for them to do that much quicker, and would provide products of identical ingredients that children are used to. It's fine and well that we're getting hardworking pharmacists to recompound adult medications for children, but mums and dads know that unless it's that specific flavor that their kid's willing to take, that 2 o'clock in the morning they'll spit out a crushed up or recompounded adult Tylenol because it doesn't taste like grape.
What makes you think the health minister is just sending thoughts and prayers? Because when we asked him yesterday, he said officials are meeting with manufacturers, there's talks with provinces. So what do you make of the health minister's saying that that is the action he is taking? Are you
That
telling that insufficient?
Absolutely. We're months into this shortage, months into this, and the health minister is doing what this government always does, is they say that they're convening. They should be taking rapid action on this. If we've learned any lessons over the last 2.5 years, that's that we can turn on a dime if we wish to, and this government often drags its feet, and long after they should have had a solution in place, then they're prepared to take a meeting. But you know, if this government was meeting with the provinces more regularly about their healthcare needs, then this is something that probably could have been addressed months ago. Thank you.
Speaking of healthcare meetings, this whole debate about transfers, where do you stand in your party? Should the transfer be increased, and should the federal government, Mr. Trudeau, meet with his provincial counterparts?
The very first step that has to be taken is for the Prime Minister to meet with the First Ministers on healthcare. They've been asking for that for over 2 years. He's refused to do that. That's step one, and that's a bare minimum expectation for a Prime Minister. Thanks so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Here, the counterparts have said, you know, maybe it's time for a public inquiry, not just into Hockey Canada necessarily, but sports organizations in general and funding. What do you think of that process?
Well, earlier this summer, that's exactly what we called for. The Conservative Party believes that there should be some form of an independent inquiry into safe sport in Canada to ensure that all sports organizations, not just hockey, are safe spots, safe spaces, open and acceptable places for all people at all levels of play.
Does the committee plan to kind of, I guess, more constructively start talking to the government about this, given, you know, the veracity of the testimony we saw yesterday from officials?
You know, obviously, I can't talk for the whole committee, but the committee has agreed to expand the inquiry that our committee is undertaking from just Hockey Canada to all sport in Canada. So it certainly gives us wide latitude to look at different angles of sport in Canada.
Any plan in the near future to call officials from Soccer Canada and Gymnastics Canada to the committee, since they have recently had their own high-profile incidents of sexual misconduct?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously we've expanded the study. We haven't got to the point yet where we've decided on witnesses going forward, but certainly those are the types of things that I think we as a committee are going to have to look at.
Is the committee enough, though? Like, do we need a full, like, going back to your earlier point about an inquiry, are you satisfied that this committee is the best format, or is it time for a larger judicial inquiry or something of that nature?
Well, certainly the committee is doing its job right now, shining light on this important issue. Obviously, what we've called for in the past was a broader inquiry, and I think that's still necessary.
Should your provincial hockey association do like Hockey Quebec did, which is disavow Hockey Canada and retain some funds?
Well, I think at this point, what I would like to see from all the provincial organizations is a strong commitment to a change in the culture and change the leadership at Hockey Canada.
But should
so I think
disavow and retain funds?
Well, I think that's one avenue right now to put some pressure on Hockey Canada. There's also the elections coming up for the new board in the coming weeks. So those are two angles where the provincial organizations will have an opportunity to exercise influence on where Hockey Canada is right now.
And what could be the consequences on the players if the provincial association sort of stop funding or try to cut links with Hockey Canada in some ways?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you know, the people who are being hurt most by all of this are the hardworking volunteers and the kids and the players who are being affected, all that. So I think at the end of the day, we need to see an organization in place that respects all those individuals and make sure that they still have a place to play hockey, to play sports in a safe and welcoming atmosphere. I do have to go, but I do thank you for the time.
Thank you, John.
Merci. Merci, M. Nater.